You're watching Open Agenda. Here's our host, Joe White.
Welcome to Open Agenda. I'm your host, Joe White. In the studio with me today is Mr. Michael Langford from Salisbury. Thank you
for having me.
Dr. Joe Venosa from Salisbury. Thanks for coming out.
Thank you. Nice jacket.
So we have a great opportunity today to bring in Dr. Micah Stauffer, the superintendent of Wicomico County Public Schools. Really, obviously want to ask him about what his role is, but with this situation with the county executive really inserting herself with personnel matters a few weeks ago, want to see just what that process is. No opinion about what should be done about the teacher who put out the really distasteful meme over the Charlie Kirk death, but just ask him about due process, because I think we, in America, we all deserve that. But also want to ask him, what challenges does he see the school have?
Yeah.
And what advantages are they starting to build? I mean, he's had a few years, and is he building some momentum, and how does he feel about it?
Yeah.
Interested in hearing what he has to say.
Yeah. Michael, would you stick around? I'd like to have him on and then have you come back and we'll chat about exactly what he said and see how you feel about it.
Absolutely. Love to.
So when we come back, we're going to bring on Dr. Micah Stauffer, and we're going to ask him about his role as the superintendent of Wicomico County Public Schools. So stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Open Agenda. In the studio with us now is Dr. Micah Stauffer from Wicomico County Public Schools. Thanks for coming out.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Dr. Joe, thanks for sticking around.
Thank you.
So I wanted to get a feel for your role, and there's a lot of folks who know who you are, or at least they think they know what you do, but I want to ask you, what exactly is your role with the Wicomico County Public Schools?
Absolutely. So the Wicomico County Board of Education has two employees. One's a clerical assistant, and the other is myself.
Okay.
In my role as superintendent of schools, I'm responsible for the 2,500 employees that we have. We're the third largest employer in Wicomico County.
Okay.
We also have 30 schools and programs, 24 schools, and then 6 different programs that we do that would go from our Alternative Choices Academy to Evening High School, our Newcomer Center, and our Early Learning Center as well. And from there, also supervising all of the students. And we have 15,600 students in our school system. So I work a lot with not only the central office staff, but also the leadership in each one of the schools, our administrative teams, our principals, and going from there. As far as the Board of Education, they have purview, obviously, over my employment. They also act on personnel matters as it relates to certificated employees, which would be our teaching staff and our administrators within the school system. They hire and also can terminate employment. I do recommendations on that to the Board of Education. And then also they certainly act on the budget that my staff and I prepare each year. And then we put that budget forward to them for approval as a recommendation each year as well. And along with that, obviously school construction would fall under those purviews as well. Then the Board of Education also acts on policies. So they would, under our recommendation and development, they would approve policies that we then, as in our roles, would go ahead and implement within our school system, either through regulations and procedures or also obviously within our day-to-day operations within the school system. And then finally, the Board of Education acts on curriculum. As far as what is being taught within the schools, we would recommend curriculum. A lot of that flows down also from the state in the form of the expectations that they have for each one of the content areas that we teach as well in the schools.
So I see you come in about once a quarter to the Wicomico County Council. You have a work session with them.
do.
What is the purpose of having that work session with them?
So when it comes to budget development, about 20% of our overall budget for the school system comes from the local government.
Okay.
And we also have the bulk of our funding that comes from the state here in Maryland. Each state's a little bit different, but in Maryland, about 70% or so comes from the state. And then a much smaller percentage comes from the federal government in the form of mostly grants and our title funding, Title IV, Title I, Title II. So when it comes to working with the county government, we work pretty closely with the county executive and the county council because they are, one of our funders for the school system. So we want to make sure that they know exactly the things that we're doing in our school system, what our needs are, how things are going, and where their money is going, because we think that's important to maintain that communication with both of them.
Does the county executive or the county council, do they have any say in your personnel matters when it comes to the Board of Education?
No, they wouldn't have say in that per se. As far as our personnel matters go, as I said, I would, when it comes to hiring or terminating an employee, I make recommendations if they're certificated. And remember that we have a large group with our facility folks, our food service folks, transportation and other things where they may not be certificated employees. But when it comes to 1,400 teachers, 100 plus administrators, they're all certificated in the state of Maryland to do the jobs and roles that they do within the school system. So I would recommend for their hire or necessarily maybe their termination to the Board of Education. But when it comes to certificated employees as well, because of their bargaining agreements that they have here in the state of Maryland and also obviously through our school system, they have appeal rights, which is pretty specific and outlined in COMAR as exactly what that quasi-judicial system is as it relates to any actions that I may recommend to the board to take for certificated employees.
So there still is a due process, whether
There's very much so a very prescribed due process that we have to follow as is outlined because it goes through that process. I'm not even in matters that I may recommend to the board until they take action. I may not be able to really discuss many of the personnel matters that are before the board because of the appeal rights, depending on which avenue they take. They may appeal it to the Board of Education, or also certificated employees can appeal it in what we call arbitration. So they have two different avenues that they could go relating to appeals for actions that I may recommend to the board to take on their employment. So it's a very prescribed process and something that certainly is grounded in law and something that we have to protect very carefully because we do not want to mess up any one of those steps within that process.
So through that process, a debate through social media, talking about personnel matters, good or bad, is not something that is part of that process at any
It's
time.
certainly not something that is a part of my process that I can do. Obviously, when there's a personnel matter, I have to act almost, as I said, that quasi-judicial process. I have to act as a neutral person, that I'm acting on what is in front of me. What is the evidence? What are the reasons for terminating a certificated employee or suspending a certificated employee within Maryland? And I have to follow what those definitions are for each one of those reasons very carefully. It's not something I can certainly comment on out in the public or anything like that during that process.
And yet the irony being the burden would probably tend to fall on you as the symbol of the school system regardless, because at the end of the day, because you have such a big responsibility, the superintendent is, I guess, going to inevitably field a lot of those public either perceptions or inquiries or questions.
Oh, absolutely. That's my role. As the superintendent of schools, I lead the school system. And that's something I signed up for and love doing and enjoy doing, but that's a part of that process, right, is not being able to speak to certain matters, but certainly carrying the responsibility for those matters.
Well, what concerns do you have? I mean, what do you think are some of the challenges when you look at the 3 and 5 year plan for the Wicomico County Public Schools? What are you actually concerned about?
Well, I think obviously we always say it and we do live it each and every day. School safety is first and foremost our priority in the school system each and every day. So as things change out in the nation and around the world, we have to respond to that to make sure that we maintain a positive school climate, safe learning environments for our staff to teach in and for our students to learn in each day. So we're always working on school safety and what are the next steps that we can take as a school system to ensure that safety, whether it be additional school resource officers in our school, updating cameras. We have a buzzer system in each of our schools and the entrances of our schools. We have security film, that we place on the lower front entrances to our school windows and all of that. Certainly looking at weapon detection systems. And that's across the nation, right? We're seeing it in school systems across the nation. We've seen it in our airports for a long time, our court systems for a long time. And those are things and steps that we need to take as we move forward. I think something else that maybe the community may not think about all of the time would be special education resources. Down here on the Lower Eastern Shore, it really is a mental and behavioral health desert. Many years ago, for those that were in the community, if you think about it, we had the Holly Center, we had Maple Shade, we had Eastern Shore Psychological. All of those entities are really gone now for adolescent youth. So we are still, as the education system, we're still educating every single child in the community. So we've taken on those responsibilities and for a long time now.
Yeah, I'm sorry to jump in, but I think you're hitting on something that I think the public often maybe doesn't always get to see, is that the schools are always seeming to do more with less in regards to their social responsibility, because when you factor in obviously the national trends on things like violence and safety, you have to respond to that. But then if you've got, and correct me if I'm wrong, but about 2/3 of our students enrolled in the public schools live below the poverty line.
That's correct, 65%.
Yeah.
So 65% of our student population are coming from families that live below the federal poverty line. A little over 2,000 students now out of our 15,600 students are speaking English as a second language, so they're learning the English language. That has increased drastically. So when we ask for, budget increases and we put that need out there to our local government, to our community, what we're really asking for is more help. And in a school system, the vast majority, probably about 80% of our budget, go towards the salary and benefits of our staff. So when we're asking for budget increases, we're really asking for more staff to be able to meet the needs that we're seeing in our schools and in our classrooms, whether they may be with students with disabilities, English language learners, students of poverty, whatever it may be. It takes more bodies, more help, more staffing, and just that traditional teacher in our classrooms, that one teacher model in a classroom, to be able to educate the kinds of needs that we're seeing within our school system.
So I want to talk a little bit about this proposal to put in the metal detectors. It's proposed to be a little over $6 million. You talked about the national trends. This obviously seems to be something that we would want to address before we make the news, so to speak.
Absolutely.
What would that involve, and what confidence level do you have that this may happen?
I think when you look at school safety, especially the measures that you take to continue to progress in that area, are really looking at a layered approach. So as I said before, you have those school resource officers. We have 12 in our school system now, one in each one of our secondary schools and our Choices Academy. We also have 2 that are assigned specifically just for elementary schools that respond to the needs that are there. We also, of course, have the security cameras as another layer. We have campus patrol that are staff that are instructional assistants, but they're trained. We have campus security managers. They're checking exterior doors. They're looking at our cameras. They're patrolling the hallways and the restrooms and just checking to make sure that everything is safe and secure in those areas, especially in our secondary schools. As I mentioned, we have the security film. So weapons detection would be that next layered approach. And certainly, we've had issues that we've responded to in our elementary, middle, and high grade levels in recent years. And our recommendation is that we go ahead and implement these systems in each one of our schools. To provide that next layer of security. That obviously it's a physical deterrent to make sure that there are no weapons that are being brought into the schools, but also that psychological safety that we know is important for our students and our staff as well.
So they know when they get there, they're there to learn, not there to be worried about.
That's exactly right.
I want to ask you too, what role do you think athletics and extracurricular activities have with the student success, particularly when they get into middle school and high school?
Well, I think it's a key. When I first started as the superintendent, obviously did a needs assessment, really talked with our students, our staff, the community members, looking to see what were some of the concerns that we had, what were we doing well that we could expand on. And just to provide that direction as we move forward, under my leadership, and that was important to me. And I think one thing that kept coming out through those surveys and through those community engagements where I was getting that feedback was just connection to school. How important it is for students to feel connected to school. Both of you may or may not have gone to school, jumped out of bed, ran to school, or got on the bus to go to school each day to go into that geometry class or to go into that English class. It could have been band, it could have been an after-school program, it could have been sports that really connected you to the school and got you excited about learning.
Something to anchor the learning.
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct. So when we looked at our data, we really saw that students were doing pretty well in our early grade levels and making progress. And even on the back end, students were doing well once they got into high school, maybe got connected through CTE or through sports or fine arts in some way. But it was that middle. Those middle grade levels,
which is a hard time of year.
Hard time for our students, whether it's discipline, attendance, grades. We saw each one of those data points take a nosedive about the time of 5th grade through 9th grade. So we're like, what can we do to really anchor our students in our schools, connect them more to the school so that we're going to see the achievement in the classrooms, which is that's our priority, right?
Yeah.
That's what we want to see, but what can we do to really anchor those students in the whole climate of the school to help improve what they're learning in the classroom and how they're achieving in the classroom. And that's where that idea came about with middle school sports. We trying to find out what pockets were working in high school and then push that down into those middle grades. And that's, we've been expanding middle school academies, which is expanding fine arts, CTE type programming in our middle schools, and sports came with that, expanding those middle school sports.
Are you seeing some early positive results? Because you're a little over a year in, correct?
That's right.
I was just, Wycomico County Education Foundation just had their charity golf tournament, and I know they raised a little over $15,000 towards it, which was amazing. We had Councilman Dave Ennis and Bonnie Ennis, and I've talked to Michelle Wright. The going to Wycomico County Public Schools myself, it is, you kind of get into middle school and there's really a little less of a purpose, and I'm glad to see that they're starting to get those offerings. So,
and that's at the same time that you're going through those awkward ages in your own life, where you need it more than ever to really capture the interests of our students. So we've been making a really concerted effort to do that.
Right. Well, Dr. Stauffer, I really appreciate you taking the time to come in here. I want you to know anytime that there's an update, something positive that you want to share, some concern that you want to get out there, we hope you would come back and sit with us.
I'd be happy to. Thank you.
Much appreciated.
And can we put a plug in for Beaver Run Elementary School?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I think we both can agree that it's
We
pretty
can.
good elementary school.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
We've done well, haven't we?
I think we've turned out
we
okay,
have.
despite our efforts, right?
That great foundation.
Well, thanks for watching this segment of Open Agenda. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Open Agenda. Mr. Michael Langford, thanks for joining us back.
Thank you for having me.
Dr. Venosa, thanks for sticking around.
Always.
So it was really interesting to get a chance to speak with Dr. Stauffer.
Yes.
Even some of what I thought he might say was different than what he did talk about. And one point he made after we were done speaking with him on camera was we asked him about the cost of the metal detectors, and it is $6.3 million, but only about $2 million of that is for the actual expense of the metal detectors. About $4 million is to have all the staff in place. As he said, he has to get about 1,500 students at certain high schools through in 15 minutes.
It's like operating an airport essentially every morning.
It would be. It would be like trying to load, 5 full airplanes.
5 full airplanes.
Yeah, and I think, too, once they're through, you want the students to be able to focus on learning and not worried about their own safety, right?
Yeah.
I think what he brought to, I felt like he gave us a good overview. You asked some very basic questions of him in his role as superintendent, and I think it is like a lot of times we forget public forward facing because of whatever gets in the media, right? Whatever about the schools that is a concern to the public. By the time that comes up, that's not necessarily what he's spending most of his time doing.
Well,
you know what I
okay,
mean? That's
so-
not necessarily his role.
So let's talk about the media, but more importantly, the social media. Okay, so we saw about 3 weeks ago our county executive completely blow up over a really terrible, ill-timed meme that one teacher at a middle school put out about the death of Charlie Kirk. I've not heard anybody who's actually come back in defense and said that it was good or funny or appropriate. But he has to deal with the personnel matters, and really the board does. And now the county executive has weighed in a most unprofessional way. But I feel like he handled it in a very stoic way, right?
I think stoic's a great word. It's a job where you have to be many things to many different people, and in the end, you have to mitigate things that are always beyond your control. And I've never seen a situation where, the school board has to also deal not just with like childish students or parents that might not know what's going on, but now you're dealing with childish politicians.
Well, she is also a parent of a student, too, so she's kind of one of those as well.
So all three.
Yeah, she's a lot wrapped into one.
That's a lot is the right word.
Yeah, it does sound like we do benefit that he's an independent of her, and I think we're also beneficial that our sheriff is and our state's attorney are.
Yeah.
Because, we've really seen her just become very unstable very quick when she's angry.
It would be quite frightening, I think, in the physical sense of our students. God forbid if the executive actually had authority over the schools like she wants.
Yeah.
That would be, I think, a recipe for the physical danger of some of our students.
So, Michael, you after having a chance to listen to what Dr. Stauffer had to say, if you were a student or you had children in the school program, do you feel like some of the initiatives that are being put out there are the most important ones, or do you feel like there's still something lacking that we should be looking at?
I feel overall good with how they're responding. I think Dr. Stauffer made the point that like 80% of the budget goes to pay. I often think about these things where I don't have children, right? I'm thinking about the aspect of managing liabilities, risks, and the financials. That's, with the school. I do think I always want to see investment in the schools. I really believe in education, So I always feel, when we talk, the revenue cap is often one of the things I think in the county that is why the school budget there isn't more put forward into the school budget.
Yeah. Don't you think that's being used as a scapegoat, though?
I think potentially it's like, even if it's a scapegoat, it's like I guess to your point, they still just don't want to fund the schools fully, maybe?
Yeah, I'm going to be honest with you. I think that's more the case.
Well, that's the thing. I think the irony is that the education issue is a red herring as far as the revenue cap debate, because we are allowed to fund the educational budget irrespective of the revenue cap. We can bust it.
We can, for that reason.
Correct. And in putting aside the revenue cap debate, I would go back to the fact that I think the council over the last 20 years has been, in my opinion, deeply irresponsible with not investing in public education.
Well, I think when you go back and look at where they were from the recession, 2008,
the recession
2010,
is where it really,
there was furloughs. They had to take a huge step back. I would think from my opinion, maybe we haven't caught up as fast as we should have. Now we saw them take in a positive step.
It's
last
changed
year.
recently, I think. Yeah.
But using the tax cap, the property tax cap, as just a scapegoat. I'm not saying don't argue it. I'm just saying when you look at the income tax revenue, which is 65% of our total budget, it has gone up more than 10% a year the last 3 or 4 years. If we can't survive off of that large of an increase year in, year out,
And the revenue cap issue.
then the revenue cap, you're talking $2 or $3 million that's actually keeping money in people's pockets. We're already seeing this piggyback tax come back in much higher rates. If we're going to try to outspend it, then when we hit the next recession, we're going to be in a whole lot of trouble.
And that's when those cuts to education could be even
Deeper.
more brutal than what they were.
I think that's the hard thing that, like, if you're being fair to the representatives, whoever it is, and even if your, principles align or don't align with how they're spending money, it's hard to predict and control, the aspects of markets and how they impact us. So 2008 or like the pandemic. So then a lot of times by the time that we hit a slowdown period, like you said, we can't invest as much money. So then by the time that we're picking up even, and if like we're only given, 2-3% increase, and then we're like, oh, well, we gave 4 or 5%, more than last year. Well, you were already behind. Yeah. And so I think that one of the issues with the schools is it seems like I've seen a number of Dr. Stauffer's presentations now. It seems like when he brings out graphs and shows like data on, what expenditures are, what that is specifically paying for, what is mandated by the state, and then what he's given, and then what payroll costs. As somebody who's worked as an accountant at almost every business, and the only business that I think I've worked for where payroll wasn't the largest expense was an airline, because the cost of that
running the planes,
the planes are so expensive.
But most businesses it is, and it's also the area that for most businesses, it's the thing that makes you sink or swim. It really is where the rubber meets the road.
And again, it goes both ways, right? Because as Dr. Stauffer said, you have, I believe, the public school system is the third largest employer in the county.
That's what he said.
From what he said. And then you factor in, of course, the other end of it as to what are we training or helping these kids get ready for.
Yeah. I was glad to see, and I've been proud to be a part of, like, they're raising money for middle school sports, because I have a middle schooler at home.
Yeah.
And there are days where I think she would rather just not even go to school.
Yeah.
But if she has a soccer game or a lacrosse game,
Yeah.
that's a huge motivating factor for her to go
Yeah.
and give it everything she has, like she's taught on the soccer field or lacrosse field.
Well, you bring up a good point that we all kind of come at it with education in a personal way, whether we have a kid or don't. We all went to school. So we're all kind of influenced in different ways. And one of the things I kind of wish I kind of asked him, even though we didn't really time for it, is as a child of a special needs kid who we now homeschool, one of the reasons we did is because we felt it was appropriate to take him out of school, because as he even said, we didn't really have the resources to provide the kind of experience that would be most beneficial to him.
Yeah.
And so I think one of the things that he's going to have the big challenge dealing with, apart from all of the budgetary stuff, is the fact that there's so many human elements that make up this dynamic of a public school system that we just don't talk about. Like he touched on a little bit. You've got, I think, more than 2,000 students who are English language learners. You've got special ed. You've got home dynamics. Interesting that I think when we use the term community schools, a lot of people use it in very vanilla corporate PR jargon. But when you really think about it, those schools are the community. Because if you got somebody who's going to somebody's birth to help with a child, or you're going to see them in your neighborhood, or you're going to see them chaperone a dance or work at a sports event or umpire your baseball game, that stuff is integral to a whole person's development, both ways, as the adult or the staff or the teacher and the student. And those are things that are always happening, but we don't think of them. Yeah. Especially when there's a negative social media comment.
I do think one advantage he has is, and we were joking about it when he was on the segment, I mean, he did go to school here. And he chose to come back.
Yeah,
and
he did. Yeah.
I'm somebody who went to school here and had to leave for a little while for career opportunities, but chose to come back. And it's great to have that perspective, but that desire to want to make your own town better.
And one of the things we always try, or at least I try to advocate for as a professor at SU, is keeping those teacher ed students, especially the secondary ones that are history majors too, is try to keep them open to the idea of staying here.
Yeah.
Whether they come here as students initially to stay, or whether they're from here and they want to stay, the importance of keeping good quality teachers and staff in the community is such a need right now.
Well, thank you both. Appreciate you taking the time to talk about this. Thanks for watching this episode of Open Agenda. We'll be back later this week with another new episode. Oh, at least I'm smiling like Mike said.